second day of UEF's final conference, Democracy is Europe, Remember to Revive. So thank you all for being here despite the cold and despite the Zoom fatigue for our speakers online. For those who did not meet me yesterday, I'm Alejandra Almarcha, Director of the UEF Secretariat. And as our participants already know, this final conference aims at looking back on all the project outcomes. The project started 1 year ago, and we have been present in Germany, Hungary, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, and Czech Republic to raise awareness of the central role of the European values in the revolutions of 1989, 1991 in Central and Eastern Europe, but also to encourage a reflection on the future of Europe. As you know, UEF, JEF, the European movement, took on from the very beginning the fourfold challenge to make the European institutions commit to launch the conference on the future of Europe, which finally happened this year on the 9th of May, Europe Day, to ensure the institutional commitment to study with respect and attention the transformative proposals of European citizens and civil society, to advocate for this conference to represent a real opportunity for the reform of the treaties and the European institutions, and finally to involve and inform as much as possible the European citizens on this first major pan-European democratic exercise. With this being said, I'd like to warmly thank our speakers for being here this morning with us on behalf of UEF. Let me introduce them briefly. Before I give them the floor, I think we have already Mrs. Ingrid Godkin. Julia, we have, yeah, okay. So she comes from the European Commission. She's policy and administrative coordination. She's dealing with policy and administrative coordination at the cabinet of Vice President Switska for democracy and demography. And among her tasks, she's a speechwriter, and her topics are the future of Europe and democracy, deliberative and participative democracy. From the civil society, we have Mrs. Leonie Martin. She was the president of JEF Europe from 2019 to 2021. She joined JEF almost or more than 10 years ago. And her topics while at JEF were the future of Europe, the conference on the future of Europe, European democracy and rule of law. Also as part of the civil society, but also from the academia world, we count today with Mr. Francisco Aldecoa, Professor of International Relations at the Complutense University in Madrid, President of the European Movement in Spain, and the representative of the Spanish civil society of the Conference in the Future of Europe. And last but not least, we have Mr. Jorge Pazos, a lawyer and a citizen representative of the Democracy Working Group of the Conference on the Future of Europe. So thank you very much again. I will give the floor to Mrs. Ingrid Godkin from the European Commission.
Good morning, and thank you very much. As usual, I would like to start every meeting by saying I hope you can hear me clearly, and that the communication is easy between everybody here. So yes, thank you very much for your invitation to join you this morning. I would like to congratulate UEF on launching this wonderful journey of Democracy is Europe, Remember to Revive. I think it is very well to the work of the Vice President for Democracy and Demography, as we tend to think of democracy as a concept that is in constant evolution, and in that sense it's important that we can respond to that and evolve with it, both as decision makers, politicians and democratic institutions designed to serve the citizens. As you just mentioned, I work in the cabinet of Vice President Dubravka Šuica. She leads the European Commission's work on democracy and demography. Just to give you a little bit of a background about the Vice President, she's a former teacher and an elected representative at the local, national and European level. Indeed, during her time as mayor of Dubrovnik, she established the first children's council there. And it was during that time that she changed politics at the grassroots level by creating a council where these young people could participate, where they could be empowered, and where they could participate in their local politics. So it has been a theme right throughout her career, and now she has this opportunity to make it a reality also at the European level. Just to ensure that everybody is aware of the role, as I'm sure most of you are. The Vice President is also the Commission's representative and co-chair in the Executive Board of the conference. This is a role that she shares with the MEP Guy Verhofstadt of the European Parliament, and of course the Slovenian State Secretary Gaspar Dobšan in his role as part of the Slovenian presidency of the Council. And this Executive Board was mandated by the joint declaration of the 10th of March, which was signed by the three presidents, each of the European Parliament, the Council and the European Commission. And most importantly, the co-chairs are joined in the Executive Board by representatives from the institutions, national parliaments, crucially also from civil society, regional authorities and social partner organisations. As for me, I also have some personal experience with a background in deliberative democracy. I've spent some time working on the Constitutional Convention in Ireland, where I witnessed firsthand how deliberative democracy exercises like the Conference on the Future of Europe have the potential to also have a pedagogical character attached to them. This is often referred to in the literature as being a learning phase, and it's also viewed as a critical element of the whole deliberative democratic process. We also see this reflected in the experience of citizen assemblies in Ireland, in Canada, and the Netherlands. And perhaps just to go back to a point that you raised earlier, it's indeed democracy is not static; it evolves constantly, and that's what I kind of opened with you here today, to say that it is important that that all of us decision makers, politicians, leaders have to evolve too, to make sure that our democracy is fit for the future. And the Conference on the Future of Europe is part of the EU level response to this challenge, and is indeed a sign of new thinking at the European Union level. I believe that it was Albert Einstein who once said, "You cannot solve new problems with old ways of looking at the world." So the Conference on the Future of Europe helps to answer the call of citizens to have a great role in policy making in the European Union beyond elections. But what I think is also crucial to mention is that the conference does not in any way replace representative democracy. It actually reinforces it and helps to make it more responsive. I think it's important in that sense that we make sure that we do not leave a space for other less constructive narratives to develop, and deliberation and deliberative democracy practices helps to reinforce that. I think also citizens, they're not we don't consider them as being objects of democracy, that they are more along the lines of participants in the democracy. And that in that sense, a well-functioning democracy is based on a relationship of trust. And this relationship of trust is something, of course, that can never be taken for granted. And in fact, this trust, especially in the deliberative process, it works both ways. There is a trust that is there from the citizens to the elected representative politicians, and also in the other direction from the politicians themselves who are engaging and deliberating with the citizens today. So we can really see that today in the European Union, through the conference, that it's not politicians alone who are shaping the future of Europe. Through the Conference on the Future of Europe, as the Vice President is regularly saying, we are bringing citizens into the heart of policy making in the European Union to shape the future European Union they want to live and work in. And so the conference's guiding principle is therefore always keeping citizens at the heart of the process. The conference is conceived for citizens and depends on them. And with that in mind, I would just like to add another side note. As you know, we're all in the throes of the pandemic at the moment, and we're having to adapt and change the arrangements for our various events. For example, today I would have very much like to join you online, but it was decided in the end that it would be, let's say, better to continue in the online sense. And of course, this is something that we're also facing with the organisation of the citizen panels and the plenary sessions of the conference, and of course the co-chairs in close cooperation with the executive board is looking at the organisation of this further. But so far, the European citizen panels, which are one of the pillars of the conference, are running smoothly. I'm sure many of you have had the opportunity to watch them, and you can see how they're really providing us with much food for thought in the four panels that we have organised around them on the various thematics. You can see how remarkable the citizens are themselves in dedicating their weekends to deliberating on the future of the European Union, and each weekend they formulate and come up with more clear recommendations each and every time, and their work is based on an agenda that they determined for themselves. We've also had feedback from observers who note that citizens are incredibly enthusiastic and very motivated to participate. And indeed, I've had the honour and the privilege to speak with some citizens, and we've noticed that even those who were initially sceptical about the process, now that they are participating, engaging fully with the process, that they're seeing much merit in it and are really eager to contribute, and of course are very eager to see what the outcomes are. And we have the as we often refer to as the 3 Ps. So I've already mentioned the European citizen panels, but of course we also have the plenary sessions, and these are quite innovative and enriching. And we see citizens from right across the European Union assembled together with their elected representatives from the European Parliament, from national parliaments. They're present there with the Council, with, of course, the European Committee of the Regions, which are, again, another important partner, just like the European Economic and Social Committee, with civil society and social partners. And, of course, these plenary sessions offer an unprecedented opportunity to discuss the issues that the citizens are putting forward in the European citizen panels discussions. And it's important that this conversation can take place, because of course a lot of the discussions take place around, the European Union, its role in the world is a village. It's very important that we can understand what that role of the European Union is and how we want that to go forward. And in a world where we really want to keep a focus on forging strong and reliable partnerships, and this is also important in the sense of defending our own values and our way of life. And this is not something that we would necessarily see as a luxury. It's actually essential for our future stability, security, and prosperity. And in that sense, of course, the Vice President is also engaging with various fora across the world, and we've been very pleased to see that the conference itself is inspiring other fora right across the world. For example, we have been contacted by those who are involved in the Chilean Constitutional Assembly, and the Vice President has spoken there many times, and we are involved in helping them and to provide input as they try to learn from the experience that we're having here at the EU level. They have been incredibly interested, for example, in the third P, which is the online digital platform. So they've been looking at that because they believe that this is something that they can transfer into the Chilean context, and would certainly help them in their efforts to deliberate in their own specific context. The Vice President is also regularly engaging with the Bali Democracy Forum and also with the Atlantic Council. So you can see that the Conference on the Future of Europe is of course for the European Union. It's within the European Union. The multilingual online digital platform it has no geo-blocking, so anybody who wants to can contribute on it. But it's also an opportunity for the European Union to lead on deliberative democracy practices in the world, to show the way forward, and to present lessons learned. And indeed, it's unprecedented in many ways, because it is this EU-wide opportunity for a transnational multilingual exercise in deliberative democracy. And it is quite a seminal moment, actually, in European democracy. And I know that the Vice President has also said in her reflections that she thinks that at times history may look back at this moment and look at it from a pre and post conference perspective, because it really is innovative. It's unequaled in terms of scale, and it's really about, as I said earlier, about bringing citizens into the heart of policy making in the European Union, and to offer every citizen in the European Union the possibility to engage in a truly European space, including those who would not usually talk about the EU, indeed with anyone, and that they have this opportunity to share their ideas with the others, that they are exposed to different points of view, and that they have a real possibility to make their voice heard and to stimulate change. And of course, we've also put a focus on the participation and ensuring that the voice is heard of the young people, as well as we ensure that 1/3 of the panels are composed of young people. And we define young people in this case as in ages ranging from 16 to 25. But we've also heard from right across all generations, all family members, let's say, are involved in the conference on the future of Europe. And it's really quite inspiring to see how citizens, they have the right to participate, but they also have the responsibility to produce ideas, and they've really taken on this role in owning and contributing to the process fully. What else can I tell you about it? We are looking also at the part that takes place, let's say, when the citizens have reached their conclusions, and often we get questions about what's going to happen afterwards, what happens after spring 2022. Well, of course, once again, this will mean all of us, all the participants, all the stakeholders coming together once again, because indeed the conference does not belong to any one politician. It does not belong to any one institution, and the conference will be the success of all of us, in fact. So when we look at spring 2022, well, will citizens panels continue? Will the digital platform remain available? And these are questions that we are listening to very carefully. We cannot go into it or commit to it right now, because of course we don't want to be seen to be preempting or influencing the discussions of the citizens in any way. What we can say is that from the experience and from how we are seeing the process evolving now, we do believe that it would be useful to structurally embed citizens' deliberations and input in policy making, and we believe that this would help contribute to making our democracy fit for the future. What is clear, of course, is that there has been a joint declaration, as I mentioned earlier. There is an explicit commitment to follow up on the outcome of the conference. This is essential, of course, for the credibility and legitimacy of the conference. And while the citizens may have fulfilled the greater part of their responsibilities and contributions and input by next spring, from then onwards, it will be incumbent upon the institutions to respond. And so that's why we will need the second part of the mandate to develop the initiatives coming out of the conference itself. But perhaps what we can say is that once again, without wanting to preempt any of the deliberations, it does seem that the conference is changing European democracy. It is changing political culture, and indeed we are transforming the way that we are engaging with citizens. But we do that not by ourselves. We do that in partnership with very important organisations like the UEF. And thank you very much for your partnership. And I look forward to hearing from the rest of the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Godkin. Thank you for your commitment to this pan-European, first major pan-European democratic exercise. As I said before, it's good that you mentioned that citizens are asking about what will happen afterwards, and the legitimacy of the exercise. And I'm pretty sure that Leonie and Mrs. Martin and Mr. Aldecoa will have a say on this for sure. So I'll give the floor to Mrs. Martin. Leonie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alejandra. Thank you, Ms. Godkin, also for your interesting contribution. Thank you, first of all, for the invitation of speaking here. Congratulations to UEF for ending this interesting project. I more wanted to talk about essentially why we need to talk about European democracy. I think Ms. Godkin did a very good job in not preempting the content of the conference. Jeff has been very active, so the Young European Federalist has been very active in creating content for the Conference on the Future of Europe. We think that it's not just, the conference should not just talk about any policy solutions. Obviously, that is nice to have, but we've been living through crises already before the pandemic. We're living in a climate crisis. I think that's the easiest one to point out. And time and time again, with rule of law, with migration crisis, etc., we see that on European level. There is a stop. There's a demand from citizens of what is Europe doing? Why is Europe not doing anything? That's what it sometimes feels like. And at the same time, we see that things stop. For instance, in the council, we see that certain initiatives. Think of the European elections in 2019, when we were supposed to have the Spitzenkandidaten, the leading candidates with the European elections. That did not come through. It is high time to talk about European democracy as such, and we think that the Conference on the Future of Europe is the tool basically to get there. So there's a couple of ideas that I wanted to throw into this debate to also kind of see what you think about all of this. One of which is, or two of which they're actually aligned, is making European elections European. European elections so far, they're held in national ways. So me, for instance, I'm a Dutch German citizen living in Belgium. I choose to vote in the Netherlands for the European elections. And that means I limit my selection of the candidates I can vote for to only the Dutch people. However, I might be interested in voting for someone from Finland, for instance, or Cyprus, for Malta, all the different corners of Europe. And having that possibility would also at the same time alleviate or create a European public debate about who would those politicians be that we want to vote for. Likewise, these European elections, so let's call them transnationalists, they would go hand in hand with leading candidate, the Spitzenkandidat, where we can make sure that we vote for the person who can then become, who can win a majority in the European Parliament to become European Commission president. I think that is very important. What I've noticed with our members, if I'm still saying our, with the members of DEF, is that people have invested quite a lot into European elections. They've put in their name in their own towns. They've motivated people to go vote, and the turnout was in fact a bit higher as well. That at the same time there was a disappointment that basically the circle didn't go through, and it was because of the negotiations in the council. So this is really where I'd like to, where I'd like the conference to kind of focus on, to make sure that we have this European democracy level, to make sure the European Parliament in that way can work and can act. We're also thinking of stronger initiative rights, so that the European Parliament can also initiate legislation like any other parliament. Another point that I wanted to mention is the rule of law mechanism. Democracy is not just a thing that we have on European level, also where we have demands for the EU, but obviously across the Union, I think all of us are aware of the violations against the rule of law happening in the Union. This is not just affecting Polish or Hungarian citizens, but in fact it's affecting all of us as Union citizens. The legal order of the Union has been put into question. People of certain minorities, they don't feel comfortable living in the states or traveling even to these states. I think this is a massive problem. I think not just on an individual rights, but it also creates questions for our single markets. Like how can you trade with someone if you don't know that the rule of law is upheld, for instance? So another proposal that we have submitted to the online platform is about the rule of law mechanism, where additional to the now already annual rule of law reports of the Commission, there is like an annual, how do I say that? Well, there's an annual overview essentially with recommendations that need to be improved, a bit like the economic semester. Think of the green, orange, and red lights following the proposal of the European Parliament. And then a third proposal that we've handed in for the online platform that has been actually, surprisingly to me, the most successful. For me, that was like the black sheep of all of it, was a European Federation. I felt that perhaps with the European public, they might appeal more to, the small topics of federalism. They might go more to Spitzenkandidaten, transnationalists, etc. No, they all went for federalism, for European federation. And that to me is very pleasing to hear. It's very comforting because it means that there are more people out there who think like, federalists and who think that the union needs to become a federation, essentially, with a constitution, with direct union rights. We've handed in, as Jeff, 13 online proposals, so there's more of this basically also when it comes to social rights and fiscal rights, when you think of enlargement, all of it. And I'm very happy to say that they're also largely popular, which is good. And we've been following up, and I'm sure the new team as well, following up essentially how they're faring within the citizens panel, but also within the conference plenary. And I really, really hope, oh man, I can't stress enough how much I hope that this conference takes itself seriously. I mean, the success of the conference really depends now on the different people within the conference that, they go to the meetings, they prepare, that they work together, they create compromise when needed, because I mean, that's all that we need essentially in the end. And that in the end, that there is a result coming out of this, because otherwise I really fear that this is again another big disappointment, not just of like Euro enthusiasts, which is not just the members in JEF and UEF who are actually quite critical of the union, but people who want to live in a united Europe. If you lose the enthusiasm with people like Jeffers, then you lose Europe. You lose the people that are actually convincing their friends that Europe is a good thing. And again, to come back to where we started, or where I started, with the climate crisis happening, I'm just more acutely aware that we need to figure out democratic mechanisms, essentially, on how we can solve and how we can create solutions for problems that are transcending national borders. Because if we don't do that, then we will have conflicts about resources, and you can either solve them in talking with each other, in voting with each other, or you can solve them in violence. And honestly, I mean, the European Union is a peace project. And growing up, I was born in 1990, I never felt so much as if the Union is a peace project. I felt the Nobel Peace Prize, right? The Union has done things, but for me, it was more a single market. To me, by now, it is a peace project again. And we want, if the conference can work, then it can make sure that the Union is staying a peace project by making sure that we keep peace on the continent and that we don't have conflicts about any resources coming up. So with that, I'd end, if that's fine with you, Alejandra.
Yes, thank you very much, Leonie. Thank you for your commitment to. Leonie has been very active in the online platform of the Conference on the Future of Europe on behalf of Jeff, but she's been the one leading this, let's say, campaign. I encourage you to check their ideas on the online platform. They have been liked by a lot of citizens. And actually, I would like to mention that in the I report, the European Youth Event report issued in October, I think it's not coincidence that a federal Europe was mentioned as one of the ideas coming from the youth. So thank you, Leonie, for that. I'll give the floor now to Mr. Aldecoa.
Hello, good morning. To begin, I would like to thank you for your invitation to participate in this debate. The objective of my speech is to remark the two fundamental aspects that, from my point of view, has the democracy for the future of Europe. The first one, I will speak about the two working groups that will debate this topic. I mean the working group 5, Rights and Values, and working group 7 about democracy in Europe. On the other hand, I want to speak about the democracy in the Conference of the Future of Europe, that I consider it that is not fair enough. I am not member of this working group. From my point of view, there is not a democratic deficit in the European Union now. However, we need to improve the European democracy, especially the representative and participative democracy, the two pillars of the Conference on the Future of Europe. In this topic, we need to take into account the European Union is an intergovernmental federal system. In order to improve the system, we need to strengthen the federal elements. And if we want to do that, we need to debate and develop the following uses. First, a strong European Parliament, especially in the reforms of the decision making. Second, the reduction of the length of European Commission and its reinforced in cooperation with the European Union Council. Third, the defense and application of the speaking candidate in order to elect the President of the EU Commission. Fourth, to vote the double list in the elections of the European Parliament in order to have a transnational list. Five, the reinforcement and improve of the uniform electoral law that is no way debating now in the Parliament. These are some of the issues that must be debated and implemented in the future of Europe. Nevertheless, we need to focus our attention also in the democracy of the Conference of the Future of Europe. For that, we need to attend that. First, the President of the European Commission, in her speech of June 2009, said that the conference about the future of Europe was going to be a debate between the institutions and the citizens and civil society as equal partners, with a strong participation of the young people. This is not the current reality at the conference. Second, the composition of the plenary between the different actors has not an equal footing. The institutions, national and European, are about the 2/3 of the plenary. It is not equality. There is not a strong representation of young people, and especially there is not a real participation of the civil society. Third, the development of the conference is not democratic because the presidents of the working groups had been elected by the board of the conference, composed by the European Parliament, the EU Commission, and the EU Council. Furthermore, 4 of 9 working groups are presided by the institutions. Only the last one, culture, youth, sport, and education, is ruled by the president of European Youth Forum. Fourth, in the fourth place, the citizens panel is not quite a democracy. The election by a random system or the selection of 800 citizens is not democratic. Also, the elected or the selection of the 80 citizens that participate in the plenary. The last word of the conclusion of the conference should be taken by the plenary of the conference and not in the board of the conference or the co-presidency. For this, we need the federalists to improve the working of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aldecoa. He's also doing a great job in the plenary of the conference. His interventions, you can check his interventions on YouTube or on Twitter, and they are worth watching them. So I encourage you to do so. I'll give the floor now to Mr. Pazos. So he will speak in Spanish and I will do the translation, just so you know, if that's okay for you, Mr. Pazos.
Hola, buenos días. ¿Se me oye?
Sí, se te oye. Voy a ir
Sí.
traduciendo poco a poco, así que si veo que es muy largo te digo, ¿vale?
Vale, vale.
Estupendo.
Gracias. Bueno, yo estoy aquí hoy como participante de los paneles europeos, como ciudadano. He sido elegido al azar. El proceso ha sido muy sorpresivo para mí porque consistió en una simple llamada un día. Recibí una llamada y me preguntaron si quería participar en este procedimiento. Inmediatamente dije que sí.
So he says good morning to everyone. He's here on his role as citizen representative of the working group of democracy. He was selected by the Spanish government randomly, and he just got a call one day and was informed that he was selected, and he gladly accepted the invitation.
Mi primera pregunta fue si tenía que preparar algún tema, porque, bueno, pensaba que era importante venir preparado, ¿no? Esto es la Unión Europea y bueno, considero que es importante, ¿no? Pero me dijeron que no, que el interés precisamente era que viniéramos sin preparación y que aportáramos libremente cualquier propuesta que tuviéramos.
So his first question was, do I have to prepare myself for a specific topic before going to the plenary of the conference? And the answer was no, you don't have to prepare, to be prepared for anything, because what we want is to have citizens, normal citizens during these agoras and these meetings.
Bueno, yo pertenezco al panel número 2, que es Democracia y Estado de Derecho y Seguridad. Y bueno, en la primera reunión, en la reunión primera, que fue en Estrasburgo, en el mes de septiembre, yo estuve en un subgrupo en el que tratamos el tema de la democracia y el Estado de Derecho, ¿no? Y uno de los temas que nos interesaba a todos, el grupo mío estaba formado por 4 ciudadanos españoles, 4 alemanes, un danés y 2 italianos.
So he belongs to the working group number 2, which is democracy, security, and rule of law. And they first met in Strasbourg. And what he really liked is that there were more citizens with other nationalities, from Spain, I didn't get all I don't remember the numbers now, but from Denmark, from Italy, from Germany, and from Spain, right?
Yes. Y la verdad que me sorprendió porque todos teníamos una idea muy homogénea de lo que tenía que ser Europa, ¿no? En primer lugar, todos tenemos la misma idea de que debemos de formar una serie de valores europeos y educar a todos los ciudadanos en esos valores europeos.
So he was gladly surprised by the fact that everyone in his group agreed on the fact that we have to work towards a stronger European education and to educate on European values.
Y muchos consideráramos que existe una dualidad entre soberanía nacional y soberanía europea, y que esa situación debe ser solventada, quizás precisamente a través de las listas transnacionales. Es un tema del que hemos hablado también.
Another topic that they discuss is the duality between the national sovereignty and the European sovereignty, and that perhaps to fix that issue, solution would be transnational lists.
Pero siempre desde el prisma de establecer con claridad una serie de valores de la Unión Europea y una serie de valores europeos que tienen que ser comunes a todos los estados.
But always from the perspective that European values have to be shared by all member states and promoted by all member states.
Esto ocurrió en la primera reunión, en el primer encuentro que tuvimos, que era un poco para sentar las bases de nuestras ideas, ¿no? Esta primera reunión sirvió para eso. Luego ha habido una segunda reunión online en el mes de noviembre, en el que participé en otro subgrupo que se encargaba de participación ciudadana.
So that first meeting was to agree on the basis for their work. Then there was another meeting, an online meeting in November. It was a subgroup of the working group of democracy, and it was on participative democracy. And yes.
Sí, nuestra primera premisa, en este caso, nuestra primera idea y que consideramos más importante es que tenemos que educar a todos los ciudadanos en lo que es la cultura europea, es decir, la cultura política europea. Nosotros, por lo menos en nuestro país, vemos que hay un déficit en ese aspecto, es decir, si voy muy rápido, si quieres, voy parando.
Si quieres, hago otra traducción de esto y que
No,
seguimos, pero vas bien, vas bien.
Vale, gracias. Nuestra idea es esa, formar en valores europeos y sobre todo en cultura política europea, es decir, porque nosotros mismos, los que hemos venido aquí, muchos tenemos desconocimiento de figuras de la Unión Europea que son importantes y que deberíamos de conocer o deben de conocer pues nuestros jóvenes, ¿no?, que se están formando. Entonces creemos que se tienen que armonizar las políticas europeas para educar en esa cultura política europea.
So one of the main ideas coming out from that meeting is that we need to ensure that we have a political culture, political culture, a European political culture, because he thinks that, for example, in Spain, we have a deficit when it comes to knowing perhaps leaders or people that have contributed to the European Union, and that has to be fixed, and for that we need an homogeneous. Sorry, yeah. I think someone is speaking.
Sí, la idea nuestra, la idea de nuestro grupo es que si la Unión Europea trasciende a cada Estado europeo, igual que en España conocemos nuestra Constitución, tenemos que conocer bien esas instituciones europeas, para qué nos sirven a los ciudadanos y qué papel juegan en nuestra vida.
Another idea is to ensure that we as European citizens know how our European institutions work, as we know how our national institutions work.
Luego, pues, estamos un poco en la línea de la señora Godkin, que se tiene que garantizar la participación de los ciudadanos. Por ejemplo, en lo que son las iniciativas legislativas europeas, que se nos fue explicado a través de un experto, de una experta en este caso, pues hemos comprobado que tienen que ser 1 millón de firmas de 7 países europeos. Pero, por ejemplo, hemos comprobado que solo está en 3 idiomas, inglés, alemán y francés. Una de nuestras propuestas será que esté en todos los idiomas, incluso en braille. Creemos que es muy importante que todo el mundo tenga acceso a esas iniciativas legislativas populares y que puedan acceder y se puedan conocer verdaderamente. Y bueno, luego también hemos hablado...
Jorge, voy a traducir esto un momentito. Sí, vale. So he says that his group is in line with Mrs. Godkin has said that we have to ensure participative democracy. He also mentioned the European Citizens Initiative. I don't know if you're familiar with the European Citizens Initiatives, but so, I mean, for the time being, we need 1 million signatures. And what Mr. Pazos was saying is that so far, there are 3 main languages for these European Citizens Initiatives, French, English, and German, and that they would like to have these initiatives to be translated into all the languages, including Braille.
Y por último, pues, otra cuestión que nos preocupa mucho a los ciudadanos es la calidad, el nivel de calidad de nuestros políticos. Los políticos les pagamos nosotros, son, por así decirlo, o no por así decirlo, nuestros empleados, y tenemos que exigir un nivel de calidad a esos políticos que participan, ¿no? Lo que no puede ser es que en la última reunión, y ahora hablaré de ella, en la que participé como embajador, ¿no?, que nos llaman, habían políticos y otros que estaban invitados o que debían de participar ni se molestaron en venir. Yo creo que eso no puede ser necesitamos políticos que se impliquen realmente y necesitamos conocer cuál es su nivel para saber si les podemos votar o no. Es decir, tenemos que tener un consentimiento, los ciudadanos, un consentimiento informado de cuando nosotros damos el voto, saber realmente a quién votamos, por qué le votamos y bueno, y tener pues eso, pues una información mucho más fidedigna y mucho más actualizada de nuestros políticos, ¿no? Esa es una de nuestras exigencias.
So I'll try to be precise. One of their requests is to know about the level or quality level of our politicians. Mr. Pazo says that basically in these meetings when he was there in Strasbourg, but also online, some politicians that were supposed to be there were not present. Some of them were really committed and were really active, but some others were not. And that this is something that should be changed, that we should have access to more information about our politicians and that it should be in a more transparent way.
Sí, quiero decir que, por ejemplo, en el caso de los españoles, hubo un político del Partido Socialista que se implicó y se molestó en tener contacto con nosotros, el señor Ruiz, pero el resto no hubo contacto con nosotros y la verdad que nos pareció, si precisamente esto para ofrecer propuestas a la clase política, creo que faltó eso, ¿no? Parece ser que eso va a ser corregido en próximas reuniones, pero nos gustaría que hubiera un poco más de implicación ciudadanos políticos.
So he thanks MEP Domenic Ruiz de Besa, who happens to be also UEF Vice President, because he was very committed and involved and was at their disposal, but this was not the case for all the politicians and MEPs. He thinks that this is going to be fixed in the next meetings, but he stressed again the lack of commitment and involvement of some politicians.
Sí, y bueno, ahora tenemos una última reunión que va a ser a partir del próximo jueves en Florencia, en el que ya vamos a concretar nuestras ideas para poder presentárselas a la comisión, a través de lo que llamamos los embajadores, ¿no? De los que también formo parte. Vamos a poder concretar todas estas ideas que yo les he expresado hoy y vamos a llegar a propuestas más concretas.
So they are meeting next week in Florence, in Italy, to materialize, let's say, these ideas and to come up with more concrete ideas.
Nosotros los ciudadanos, y puedo hablar por los que tengo, con muchos con los que he hablado en estos días, tenemos la esperanza de que no solo de que se nos oiga, sino se nos escuche, es decir, de que realmente esto sirva para algo.
He said that we, the citizens, want to be not only heard, but listened, and that, that we, citizens, hope that this exercise is worth it and leads to a transformative proposals.
Y nada más, lo que quiero decir también es que está siendo una experiencia muy enriquecedora, muy interesante. Yo creo que para todos los que participamos es así, porque el nivel de participación en las plataformas está siendo cada vez más elevado. Y bueno, y lo dicho, terminar esta intervención dando las gracias por la invitación y espero poder participar en otros actos como este y poder expresar mi opinión y sobre todo ser un poco la voz de los ciudadanos que estamos formando parte de estas plataformas ciudadanas. Muchas gracias.
So he says that it's an enriching experience, that he's very happy to be part of it as a citizen representative ambassador, as they are called. He thanks us for the invitation and he hopes to keep speaking on behalf of other citizens because it's his role at the moment. So thank you very much, Mr. Pazos. This was a really useful intervention. Yeah, because for me, it's my first time, I think, that I've met, even if online, citizen representative. So it's really good to meet one of those citizens representatives. Now it's time for our audience and our participants to ask questions. This is supposed to be, as yesterday, a dynamic conversation. So please feel free to ask your questions. I have the mic here. So do we have any questions? Yes, from participants online. So yes, please. No. Yes, please, Mr. Aldecoa.
May I replay in Spanish a
Yes.
Jorge
Okay.
Pazos?
Yes, and
Hola,
I'll
hola,
do the
Francisco.
translation then. Yeah.
¿Qué
Hola,
tal? ¿Cómo estás?
muy bien, ¿y tú?
Muy bien, gracias, gracias.
En primer lugar, me alegro mucho que haya representantes de los ciudadanos. Yo he criticado el sistema, como habrás podido oír.
Sí.
Yo he intentado hablar con vosotros, incluso creo que contigo hablé.
Sí, es verdad, he hablado contigo también.
Intenté los teléfonos vuestros, pero no los he conseguido. Yo te estoy mandando por el chat mi teléfono. Vale. Y desde luego, una de las dificultades que he visto en la conferencia es que no hemos podido hablar entre nosotros o no tenemos los datos.
Sí, I will do the translation. Okay, so Mr. Aldecoa was very critical with the system or with the structure of the Conference on the Future of Europe. One of his complaints is about the fact that he didn't have access to some data of the participants, of the citizens' representatives, and they are basically now sending or writing their phone numbers in the chat to be in contact. So that that I guess explains also the lack of communication. I don't know, but okay, good to know. And yes, Patsy, you can puedes continuar. No se te oye. Patsy, you're muted.
Precisamente a esto, a que no hemos tenido oportunidad, porque nosotros solicitamos oficialmente las direcciones de los panelistas y nos dijeron que que iba contra la protección de datos, pero los teléfonos y las direcciones nuestras, las mías, por ejemplo, son públicas. No tiene sentido que unas sean públicas y otras no.
Okay, so Mr. Aldecoa is complaining about the fact, and this is something that we have experienced at UEFT, is that the citizens' representatives' contact details are not public. So therefore, it's really difficult for us to contact them unless, well, they give us their contact details. But for some people that are part of the conference, like in this case, Mr. Aldecoa's contact details, well, those contact details are public. Why is that? Because well, we have to respect and protect the data of these people. They are not public figures. In this case, Mr. Aldecoa is, because he's the representative of the civil society in Spain. But this is something to bear in mind and to take into account when advocating and lobbying for our ideas, of course, as civil society.
Por último, me gustaría añadir que desde el movimiento europeo, no solo el español, sino en el board del que participo, hay una preocupación porque la sociedad civil organizada solo tenga 8 puestos y sin embargo los ciudadanos tengan 80. La cuestión es que la Constitución Europea la han hecho las asociaciones, no los ciudadanos individuales. A nosotros nos parece muy importante que estén los ciudadanos, pero quizá la proporción no es adecuada.
He expresses, Mr. Aldecoa expresses his concern about the fact that the civil society, the organized civil society, has only 8 seats in the plenary of the conference, and citizens have 80. He understands and acknowledges the importance of involving the citizens, but the construction of the European Union has been led by the civil society organizations. So Mr. Aldecoa thinks that the proportion, between the seats for citizens and the seats for the civil society, the organized civil society, should be different. Any other reactions from the speakers or questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Quiero decir
Yes,
una
please,
cosa.
Mrs. Kotke.
Sí, simplemente a lo que
Jorge,
dice...
espera, que tenía la mano levantada. Yes.
Perdón, sí.
So, please, Mrs. Godkin.
Thank you very much again. I will react perhaps first to a question that I see in the chat box. Is the timetable not too short? Should we have a prolongation of the conference? Well, I mean, the thing is, when you think about the process itself, let's look at the two different, let's say, structures. Parliaments are places for debate. The Conference on the Future of Europe is a place for deliberation. So there is a difference between debate and deliberation. And when it comes to deliberation, citizens need space, they need time, they need valuable information, and they need access to experts who can present the specific topics in a particular way so that they are informed about what needs to take place. Is the timetable not too short? I think you're probably aware to some extent that it was originally conceived to last for 2 years. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, we're adapting all the time our events and our organizations as a result of the pandemic, and the safety and health of our citizens and our participants and our stakeholders will always be the most important in the organization of the Conference on the Future of Europe. So for that reason, it wasn't possible for it, let's say, to start as originally planned. There's also a second, let's say, constraint and importance, and that is we need time to be able to give the feedback to the citizens on the input they have provided. That is a vital part of the process. It's not just at the moment when the citizens actually have submitted everything that they wish to submit that the process is over. In fact, it's when the most important part starts, that part of the process that lends itself to the legitimacy of what it is we are doing when the European institutions, the 3 European institutions, actually look and consider the proposals that have been put forward by the citizens, and that we look at them very carefully, and that we will be in a position to be able to explain how and why we can respond in a certain way. So let's just say, for example, something is proposed, but perhaps it's not within the remit of the EU. Perhaps it's something much better suited to subsidiarity. And I think that leads me to a point, a very important one, that Mr. Jorge Passos brought up, and that is with regards to the education of citizens. And I would totally agree with him when it comes to saying that citizens need to know more about their political structures, about how their institutions work. I have heard citizens saying, okay, we see the 3 institutions coming together now, working very closely on the conference, but we thought they always worked that closely. So it depends on process, it depends on how they understand the actual workings, and it is quite a complex one. But it's important that we do have also a political culture, again, as Mr. Passos said, that helps to respond to citizens, and one that citizens can have confidence in, and one that they feel represented in, of course, as well. And indeed, to say that the conference, it's not something that has, just suddenly appeared either. We kind of, in some ways, stand on the shoulder of giants in many ways, and deliberative democracy is the next step, let's say, after our participative models that we have had. So we have had extensive public consultations on various aspects of European Union policy, where we open the process for anybody who is interested to put forward their points of view on each of the policies that we're putting forward. For example, we did a recent one on a long-term vision for rural areas, and we had thousands of responses. We did one for the strategy on the rights of the child, and I'm very pleased to say that we not only had responses from a lot of organizations, but children themselves have actually contributed to shaping what was put into that strategy. And this is something that we're looking to hopefully streamline across various EU policies. A couple of other points perhaps that I would like to bring up. I mean, civil society, we believe, is very well represented in the in the conference. If you look, for example, we have the umbrella organization of the European Economic and Social Committee. This is a European-wide organization that has hundreds of members of highly valued organizations that participate in the conference, and they feed in their points in this way. And they also are excellent at organizing events on the platform. And these ideas then are taken from the platform, they are fed into the citizen panels, and then they are also, as a result of those discussions, fed up into the plenaries. So that voice is heard. That voice is vital, by the way. We depend on them very much, and they are vital partners in this exercise. So their participation is not only highly valued, but also highly necessary. So I don't want to take up too much time, so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kotkin. Do we have, yes, Stefano, please.
Yes, again, thanks a lot to all the speakers for this quite nice insights on the ongoing conference. And I have a point that relates to what Leonie just said, and I very much agree with her when it comes to, you know, it's important to keep the enthusiasm of the civil society, of the ones that participate, and somehow to also deliver. In a way, we don't want, let's say, you know, there was a say, like, if you want not to solve the problem, organize a conference and then simply let it go and let it go and let it go. This is not what we want. But the point is that many of the issues that were mentioned, for example, I don't know, EP having a legislative initiative, let's say, very much on board with that. I mean, every normal parliament does that. Or again, really formalizing the Spitzenkandidat. Again, we know that it failed with the last commission and so on and so forth. This basically brings in an elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is that this means that we need to work on the treaties. So in the very final outcome of all this nice discussion, if we want to move beyond, implies a treaty change. And we know that the last time we tried to do a very inclusive discussion with, you know, somehow ideas from civil society and so on and so forth, in the widest possible circle, ended up in a very cold shower. And that very cold shower somehow brought back the participation to, again, behind closed doors, you know, the wise men sit around the table, Lisbon Treaty, and so on and so forth. So the point is that, aren't we running the risk to a certain extent to, let's say, create a certain degree of expectation that then when it comes again to treaty change, we might not really be able to address? I mean, do we have an answer to this? Do we have a potential way out? Because we know if we go to treaty change, we know that no one wants to open that Pandora box. And if we open that Pandora box, we run a very big risk. How do we get out of this contradiction?
Thank you, Stefano, for your question. Leonie, any reactions?
Yes, thank you very much, Stefano. You hit the, what is it, the nail right on there. I mean, this is the bigger issue basically of the conference. But honestly, I don't see any way out except treaty change. I mean, we can go on with short-term solutions on everything, but it will mean that the union will be, you know, less effective, less democratic, more disappointing in the years to come. I'm sure, like, it will be fine in a way, but it won't be as good as it can get. And I think in the long term, those consequences will be more deteriorating. So what do we do instead? Honestly, I think with the conference, we have an opportunity to create a public debate across Europe. But not just across Europe, it also means that we need to have debates on national level and on regional level, local level, on what it means, you know, what kind of vision we have for Europe as such. And with that, we need to actually activate the citizens. We need to activate and empower citizens to make sure that, you know, we all are aware of how we're contributing to things. We're all aware that this is actually one political system and not just 27 different ones. that you know, the German chancellor changing, for instance, has an effect on all of us, because it means that the one seat in the European Council is changing, for instance. All of this we need to reveal and we need to unleash. If there are results coming from the conference, if the conference deems that there should be treaty change in a way, or that these are the proposals that we need to do, and they're not implemented, then honestly, it is our responsibility as citizens to follow up with that. There are elections where we can address these things. There are the European elections in 2024, but there is also national elections. We need to create the public debate about why are politicians clearly investing not just money in creating the promotion that we have on the conference, but also, you know, bringing everyone to Strasbourg, time and energy of politicians, of civil society, of citizens, if it's just for waste. It is, I mean, as I said, the success of the conference depends now on the people in the conference, but the implementation of it and what is, you know, what is done with it later on, that is also on us. It's our responsibility to call out some people. And I'm honestly, I'm feeling a bit more positive than I did a few weeks ago with the German coalition agreements that likely will be voted upon, where there is a clear agreement from one of the bigger states saying, you know, we should definitely follow up. We should, I think, also extend, where there are ideas on how Europe should work. So I think that is one thing, and it also seems like they're willing to, you know, then go ahead with other states that want to go ahead. I think in some cases that's something to be looked at. There was another point I wanted to make, but in the end, you know, I'll just focus on it's our responsibility to make sure that there are some results, because otherwise, you know, otherwise we're just stuck. That's also fine, but I don't want to be stuck. I want to live and thrive in Europe.
Thank you very much, Leonie. We have a question from Esther from Hungary.
Yes, I would like to ask, I know that this platform is a great initiative, but it's in a way a project or an opportunity for those who know how to use those platforms, those digital platforms. And for example, if I think about how the conference on the future of Europe is represented in the Hungarian media, we don't talk about it at all. There's no information about it. And my question would be, how would it be possible to reach out to those people who are not digitally that advanced? And I think it's not only in Hungary, it's in many countries. And especially if the national media is not so much in favor of the conference.
Thank you, Esther. I will take a couple of questions more, perhaps. Is there any other? Okay. Gustavo from Spain? No. Florian from France? Yeah.
So my question is maybe for Mr. Passos Lopez. So what do you do between the meetings? And did you something or not? And what will be the outcomes of the discussion? Would it be a report, a resolution? And do the European institution have and the organizer have some expectation contain about the form, the results? Yeah.
Okay, so this question is meant for Mr. Passos. So
maybe I could say it in Spanish.
No, voy a hacer no te preocupes. So, Jorge, pregunta a Florian de Francia, ¿qué es lo que hacéis los representantes ciudadanos entre meeting y meeting? ¿Qué vais a proporcionar? Es decir, un informe o una resolución con vuestras ideas. Y luego si hay algunas expectativas por parte de las instituciones sobre vuestro trabajo. ¿Cuáles son las expectativas?
Hola, Florian, gracias por tu pregunta. En cuanto a las expectativas que tenemos, pues, son unas expectativas altas. que quizás, con lo que han dicho Stefano, ¿no? Creo que ha intervenido, la pregunta anterior era Stefano, ¿verdad? En algunas cuestiones van a ser difíciles de cumplir. Te pongo un ejemplo. Una de nuestras propuestas es terminar con la regla de la unanimidad, del voto unánime, y esto muchos somos conscientes de que va a ser muy, muy difícil, ¿no? de cumplir. Lo que ha dicho Leoni, de que esto se puede cambiar a través del voto transnacional, ¿no? O eso me ha parecido entenderle. También es cierto, pero hay un componente de dificultad muy elevado, ¿no? Pero nosotros entendemos que esto es como una ficha de dominó, ¿no? Como un dominó. Hay que empezar a tirar una ficha para que vayan cayendo las demás y para que la Unión Europea vaya avanzando en valores a lo que queremos llegar en años sucesivos. Pues es importante, pues, por ejemplo, acabar con esa regla de la unanimidad. Pero
Jorge,
los
espera,
ciudadanos también somos conscientes.
Paro un momento.
Sí.
So, Mr. Pazos is saying that their expectations are really high, but that the expectations are going to be hard to meet because of the difficulties of the status quo for the time being. So one of their ideas or one of the discussions is about the unanimity rule. But of course, you know, the unanimity rule, for that, we need to think. Mr. Pazos said that Leonie mentioned the transnational votes, but I think she meant more, I mean, treaty changes. Leonie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for the unanimity rule, if we don't reform the treaties, it's going to be really difficult for us to change that. Even if there is a possibility in the treaties to not reform the treaties and to overcome the unanimity rule, but that's my intervention. Huh? That is not Mr. Paz's intervention. So yes, they are discussing this, Jorge, but he said that this is a first step, that and it's, you know, step by step we can achieve and progress on this, let's say, progressions. I don't know what did you say?
Efecto dominó, para que haga un efecto dominó.
Okay.
Era lo que yo decía.
I'm not sure I can translate that into English, but it's
Domino
just...
effect.
Okay.
Otra cosa, lo que él ha preguntado sobre cómo se va a trasladar esto, pues todas estas propuestas que nosotros hacemos se van a trasladar a la comisión. Es decir, a partir de esta última sesión que vamos a tener esta semana que viene en Florencia, se le va a trasladar a la comisión. Y luego hay un grupo de ciudadanos por panel, 20 ciudadanos por panel, distribuidos por edades, elegidos por edades, que le vamos a trasladar esto directamente y a discutir o a hablar con ellos, con los miembros del Parlamento Europeo, de la Comisión, de la sociedad civil, por ejemplo, en el que está integrado Pachi, Francisco, y lo vamos a discutir a través de 3 sesiones más que van a ser en el mes de diciembre, en el mes de enero y en el mes de febrero.
Okay, so after the next meeting in Florence next week, they are going to issue a report to the European Commission. And after that, they will send this report to other 20 citizen representatives from different backgrounds and ages. And there will be 3 other meetings in December, January, and February to discuss this report, this first report.
Y bueno, ya, si me permite, que quería hacer unos apuntes de la intervención posterior de Francisco y de la señora Gotkin, si puedo hacerlo ahora o espero al final.
Let's answer Esther's questions and then we get back to you. Volvemos a ti. Vamos a ver si podemos responder la pregunta de Esther.
Vale.
¿Sí? So, any reactions to Esther's question? No. Yeah, how to reach out to other people that are not digitally perhaps educated. So, Leonie, yes, thank you. And Mrs. Gotkin, yeah.
Yes, perhaps it makes more sense for Mrs. Gutkin to start actually. Then I add up with civil society perspectives.
Thank you so much, Leonie. Sorry, I may have had my microphone off mute for a while, so sorry if I was making some noise. Yeah, no, I think it's a very important point to make. As I may have briefly referred to earlier, you know, not everybody is a digital native. Not everybody is interested in European politics. Not everybody is interested in national politics or politics full stop. So how do we reach out to these people? Well, we're doing it in a myriad of ways. So, for example, I mentioned earlier that the Vice President for Democracy and Demography, Dubravka Šuica, who's a co-chair in the executive board, she was a mayor before. And we're very happy to have finally a mayor in the college. It's really important because she understands the grassroots. She understands the importance of local politics. She understands the necessity of engaging with people on the ground and making sure that their voices are heard, that if they're not engaged, that they are engaged. So she's doing that in her role as a mayor. She's engaging, for example, with organizations like Eurocities, and we had a wonderful meeting with them recently. She also works very closely with the European Committee of the Regions, and they are doing wonderful work in reaching out to the local and regional authorities to raise awareness on the ground of the conference on the future of Europe, because it is a crucial exercise. Crucial aspect to the conference is awareness raising. People need to know it's happening, and we need to get outside of, let's say, the Brussels bubble. We want to completely burst the Brussels bubble with the conference on the future of Europe. And the Vice President is regularly saying we need to reach everybody from the mountains to the islands. That's part of our role, but we can't do that alone, and that's why we do depend on civil society. That's why they are an extremely important partner in this. It won't succeed without their full and utter engagement. It quite simply won't. We need them there. We need them because they are our key multipliers in this process. And so we are always in close contact with the European Economic and Social Committee. We are determined to participate and be involved and motivate and support where we can the work of civil society. We also have sent that message, and the Vice President has met several times with the heads of the representations in the various member states. And she's also met with the European Parliament local offices in the various member states to invite them to come up with new and innovative ideas to reach out to those who are not going on the multilingual digital platform. It's true that sometimes in these kind of fora you have a certain group of people who will participate there, but our communication exercises from all the institutions really are focused on this idea of making sure that those who can do participate and that those who don't come to the digital platform can attend various events on all levels, local, regional and otherwise. And it's also important for another reason, as I mentioned earlier, for a truly intergenerational conversation. Intergenerational solidarity is key in policy making. It's not just for one mandate, it's for years and decades to come. You know, this is something that we really need to look at very closely, and again, I hope I'm not preempting anything by saying this, but this is something that we're talking about because we work on that. It's actually part of our portfolio. So this is something that we're working on very closely in our conversations on the Green Paper on Aging, etc., but also within the context of democracy itself. So reaching out, we do that ourselves, but we do it also most importantly with our partners as well. I hope that was a full answer or help to answer that question. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Mrs. Kotkin. Leonie, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I think, so on one hand, we have civil society, and we already, I mean, Jeff, for instance, has a project called Next Step to Europe, together with IAG, funded by the European Parliament, in creating youth consultations to bring this topic to young people, and specifically those that do not usually engage with European politics or politics. I think what is crucial, though, to underline is that civil society also does not want to be understood as like a service provider, let's say. So it should not just be us. We do need national level also to kind of the national governments and national parliaments to underline that this is a legitimate process that we are promoting as such. So far, I have barely seen any promotion. I have seen some posters in German train stations, but from what I understand, this has been financed by the European Commission with representation in Germany, for instance. So there's already space for so much more on one level. And then, Esther, you were absolutely right in pointing out that obviously the public space in some countries is not healthy anymore or resilient as such. I mean, Orban and his government, they were actually one of the governments trying to create public attention for it with these advertisements in national newspapers and a random collection of diverse demands, let's say, for the future of Europe. So, I mean, that's one way to go about it, but I think as such, I think it's really on to civil society. And I know it's a lot to ask because civil society is already struggling quite a lot in Hungary and trying to make sure that, you know, you're getting through the next elections and trying to recreate democratic structures. But perhaps here and there, this can go in hand. Perhaps it can create also a way of having a conversation with people about Europe or the future of Europe. I think here, from what I've seen so far, is that specifically regional actors are very keen to also gain political space. The Committee of the Regions, for instance, is very active. The Assembly of European Regions, also very active in this debate. They're all very keen in creating, inviting for debates. And I think, you know, knowing that here and there we do have mayors that form like this opposition, specifically in the Visegrad sessions, perhaps this is actually one way to go about it, to create these, not alliances, but partnerships to set up events and to invite people for consultation as such. I think that could be one way to go about it. But again, it's on all of us. It's also media reporting about this, which they don't, and clearly need to do more.
Thank you, Leonie. We are running out of time, but I'll give the floor to Mr. Pazos and then to Catherine, participant online. Then if there is one more question in the audience, yes, Ivan. Okay, so I will give the floor to Mr. Pazos and then I will take 2 questions, but not just, yeah, okay. So, Jorge, ¿puedes hablar ahora?
Sí, sí. ¿Se me oye?
Sí, se te oye.
Sí. Bueno, gracias, Alejandra. Un par de cosas, ¿no? En cuanto a lo que comentó Francisco, es cierto, y además lo olvidé. Él sí estuvo en contacto con nosotros, y es verdad que no se facilitaron los teléfonos de las personas que acudíamos. Y luego en la primera reunión del grupo de embajadores, para nosotros fue muy decepcionante, porque no pudimos tener la oportunidad de debatir con los políticos o incluso con los miembros de los movimientos de la sociedad civil, ¿no? Nos han dicho que eso se va a corregir para la siguiente, que es ahora el día 17, ¿no? Esperemos que así sea. Y luego, pues, sobre lo que dice la señora Kotkin del tema de la educación, estoy completamente de acuerdo. Nosotros hemos insistido muchísimo en ello. Creemos que es fundamental que se inicie una educación en cultura de lo que es la Unión Europea y los valores de la Unión Europea, porque solo así va a poder haber unas decisiones de los ciudadanos como mucho más pensadas y mucho más meditadas. Y luego el tema de las listas transnacionales creemos que también es una cuestión muy interesante para nosotros, ¿no? Y luego también una cosa que se me había olvidado, que debatimos sobre la forma de participación, ¿no? Si tenía que ser una democracia parlamentaria, una democracia directa, una democracia deliberativa, ¿no? Aquí sí hubieron, en el grupo mío, pues sí hubieron bastantes opiniones disonantes, ¿no? En este aspecto. Unos pensábamos que tenía que ser una democracia, una mezcla de una y otra. Otros, por ejemplo, solo entendían que debía ser una democracia parlamentaria, ¿no? Bueno, es un tema muy interesante que esperamos tratar en esta última sesión más en profundidad y hacer las propuestas concretas a la Comisión.
Okay, thank you, Jorge. So a few points. Mr. Pazo says that Mr. Alecoa is right. I mean, the data protection was there, and therefore the communication between citizen representatives or ambassadors and civil society representatives was difficult. But now, well, they found a way now to fix that problem. He stresses again the fact that the politicians' involvement was a bit disappointing, and that next time they were reassured that in the next meeting in Strasbourg in 2 weeks that will be fixed. But he would like to stress that again. Then he mentioned, he said that he's totally in line with Mrs. Kotkin, what Mrs. Kotkin said. And when it comes to European culture, because he thinks that if European citizens doesn't have access to European culture, that we cannot take reflected or thoughtful decisions when it comes to our politicians and European politics. Then he also mentioned that there were controversial or dissonant opinions in his working group when it comes to democracy, participative democracy, and representative democracy. So some participants or some citizens representatives thought that they were more on the side of representative democracy. Some others would like to have a combination of both. And so it's a work in progress, and they will report to the Commission after this meeting. He hopes that they will come up with more concrete ideas after the next meeting in the upcoming days. So we have, yes, Catherine, our participant online.
Thank you. Do you hear me? Okay, just perhaps a last question. Many difficulties regarding the Conference on the Future of Europe have been discussed, and thank you for all, including the timing issue. Of course, 2 years was reduced to 1 year, and that's a very short time span, especially considering we are 450 million citizens, all in all, or approximately. But another issue that I wish to raise is you can't ask everything from the platform, and you can't ask everything or expect everything from the conference. If you consider that Europe remains pretty much invisible, I mean, Europe is absent from educational systems, and Europe is peripheral in the media. I'm not particularly discussing social media, but newspapers, the way, the ordinary ways to reach out to European citizens is regular information, constant feedback about what is happening in Brussels. We've been fighting or discussing this for many decades already. But isn't it now time to sort of explode the blocks that exist? We need to inform the citizens. I mean, they deserve it, they need it. And this is a daily task that the media should take place. I'm not, of course, suggesting a centralized system of information. This is for 450 million citizens. That would be too much, and I think there are not many civil servants, European civil servants, for that. But the journalists should be aware of the needs, and the newspapers could perhaps devote 1 page to European issues, not just international affairs. For example, educational systems can no longer contain Europe at the periphery, and I'm really insisting on the periphery. This is, I mean, this is the basic scope that is needed at the back, in the background, for the conference to reach out to all the citizens. And it is very urgent to get started on this. We have been motionless, we have not moved, and we have not budged. And I think it is not really tolerable for a European democracy to accept this. I don't know what the European Commission could do, perhaps make a proposal, have a cross-border platform, exchange of information in the people's languages as well. This is very important. But do something about this, because this is our ecosystem, that democratic ecosystem that we need at the back of the conference, I believe. It's a big question. Sorry for this.
Thank you, Catherine. I'll take on one more question.
Yeah, thank you, Alejandra. I have a quick question building up on what Catherine has said for Ms. Godwin to sum up perhaps all the reflections that have been said. Ms. Godwin, Francisco, Jorge, and Leonie have been very clear, and I think they've reflected very well. Civil society really likes the conference, has been demanding the conference for a long time, but there's a lot of criticism on the, lack of, democratic, I don't know how, democratization, right, of the conference, lack of openness, perhaps. Can I put it like this? What does the Commission think about it? What's the position of the Commission? Does the Commission acknowledge that criticism coming from civil society, from citizens, from the youth, or does the Commission disagree with it? Thank you for your thoughts here.
Okay, so I'll give the floor to Mrs. Kotkin. Then if we have other reactions from the speakers, please raise your hand. Mr. Aldecoa, if you want to say something also at the, after Mrs. Kotkin, please feel free. But now I'll give the floor to Mrs. Kotkin.
Thank you very much. And certainly just on these last few questions, we could have a whole conference all by itself that could go on for many days. Yes, it's, what can I say? The EU is often on the periphery of media. I couldn't agree more with Catherine Viedon on this point. I'm Irish, and anytime when I was living in Ireland before I moved to Brussels, whenever the EU was spoken of in Irish media, it was said the word Brussels was used, and it was used with a certain tone, almost one of disgust. And I think that's something to do, like Catherine said, and I think Leonie also referred to it. This is not just a European level thing that needs to happen. It needs to happen from the roots up, but it also requires a national commitment to it as well. It is our member states that actually are running the heart of Europe at the moment. It is them that make their decisions in the Council. It is them who can actually give the greatest amount of visibility to the conference itself by organising their own citizen panels, national citizen panels, and we have provided guidelines for them, encouraging them to do this with a view to to enabling as much as possible. Those who have experience can continue on and build on that. In Ireland and Belgium and Germany have quite a bit of experience in it, and Spain too. But those that don't, we don't want them to feel left out, and we don't want them to have to start the work from the ground up. There's been a lot of work done on deliberative democracy in the European Union, and so we have endeavoured to provide that. When it comes to education, if this is one of the recommendations that comes from the citizens as a result of the Conference on the Future of Europe, then all I can say is it is something that we will have to consider seriously, as we will all of the proposals. There is next week a 9th European Education Summit coming up, and I think some of these issues will be raised there as well, because of course education is very important, and I alluded, let's say, to it somewhat earlier, but in a different sense, in the sense that a deliberative practice and one certainly like the Conference on the Future of Europe, it does teach, it helps people to learn. And I've seen it and heard it, and Jorge will be best placed to be able to confirm this or not, but I have seen in the plenaries, for example, citizens standing up and saying, I learned something very interesting about this particular topic in my particular working group today. I want to have more information about it before I have to go into my next working group or before I go into my next plenary meeting. And so, you know, it's very interesting and reassuring on the one hand to see the citizens so engaged and so serious about providing the work and taking on this huge role that they have. But it also shows that there is a gap. And I think that's all I can say on that. About the lack of I mean, the conference comes out in for a lot of criticism. On various, on various ideas. I don't think anybody has ever claimed that it's perfect. I think one of the key things we have to look at is that it's happening. I think this is one of the most important things. It's the first time we've ever done this on the level that it's at. It's not perfect, and we have seen some ways that where we have been able to fine tune it as we go along. We're looking at that, and we are going to look at lessons learned from that, as you do with every deliberative process. You look at it as you go along. It's always constantly being evaluated. We have observers present all the time, looking at how it's going, listening to how the citizens are being treated, listening to how they're feeling. Are they happy with the process? Do they need more? Do they need less? What more do they need? And we have involved as many people as we possibly can from all parts of the society, because it is a whole of society approach. If we don't have everybody on board, and sorry if I mean, we don't want to treat civil society, and that's not our aim ever, to treat civil society as service providers. Absolutely not. I think the key word here is partners, and we have to be partners together. That's a different attitude. That's a change in thinking. It's a change in political culture, and it's one I think that we all welcome, and that it's this is an opportunity for us to deepen that even further, I would argue. So yes, thanks for those interesting points. I could go on for hours longer, but I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kotkin. Yeah, I can imagine that, but unfortunately we have run out of time already. If there are any other reactions from the speakers, please feel free. Otherwise, I will close this session. No? Okay. So thank you very much again for being here with us today. I think our participants, they were already a bit familiar with the Conference on the Future of Europe, but I think after this session, they are very familiar with the Conference on the Future of Europe. They will have a session, just for you to know, they will have a training session this afternoon on how to use the digital platform. So yes. So thank you very much on behalf of UEF and our participants. Let's be in touch, and have a nice day.